The sky bled gray as snowflakes whispered down like ashes, gentle and merciless. Charlotte's boots barely broke the crusted snow. Her wrists burned from the rope, binding them behind her back. Every stumble earned her a jerk forward, her arm nearly wrenched from its socket. She didn't scream. Screaming had never saved her before. Behind her, one of the men chuckled. "Ain't she quiet now, Thomas? Told you she'd give up fighting. I'll believe that when she stops breathing," the other answered, spitting tobacco into the snow. They were cousins to her late husband, Jared and Thomas Cole, ranchers with broad shoulders, small minds, and mean streaks inherited from generations of bad blood. They were also drunk, or pretending to be. Pretending gave them more permission to act like devils. Charlotte had grown, used to the weight of grief. It clung to her ribs like wet wool since Samuel died that spring. He'd been gored by a bull, or so they claimed. He'd always smelled like whiskey and sounded like thunder. Sometimes, in her darker moments, she'd wondered if it had truly been the bull that finished him, or if the land had finally taken back what he never deserved. After Samuel's death, the ranch should have passed to her. That was the law. But the law bent easily in the territories, especially for women with no family, no allies, and no sons. When Jared offered to escort her into town to finalize the paperwork, she'd felt the first prickle of suspicion. When Thomas joined them at the trail fork, she knew something was wrong. Still, she hadn't expected this. Charlotte staggered as her foot caught on a root hidden beneath snow. Thomas yanked the rope again, harder. She hit the ground, cheeks smashing into ice. Distantly, she tasted copper. "You seeing stars yet?" Jared asked. "Ain't you a delicate little thing?" She spat blood, not words. "Pick her up," Thomas muttered. "We ain't far." They dragged her the rest of the way. The cave yawned before them, a dark mouth choked with mist. Trees had thinned, the trail giving way to broken rocks and patches of exposed soil, dark like dried blood. Bones littered the ground, animal bones, most of them. Jawbones, snapped femurs, a cracked skull half buried in pine needles. The wind shifted, and something rank drifted out from the cave. Charlotte's breath caught. Even bound, even bruised, her instinct screamed. This wasn't just abandonment. It was a sentence. Jared gave her a little bow. "Consider this natural justice." "Mountain wolves got no preference," Thomas added. "They'll eat man, woman, or sinner all the same." "Which are you again?" Charlotte asked, voice hoarse. That earned her a slap. Thomas's hand cracked across her face, turning her vision white. She didn't cry. She only blinked once, slowly, and held his gaze. He looked away first. They tied her to a tree just outside the cave's mouth. The bark scraped her back where her coat had been torn. Jared tested the knots like he'd done it before. Maybe he had. Maybe some poor farm girl somewhere still screamed at his memories. When they stepped back, she straightened as best she could, jaw clenched, breath fogging in shallow bursts. "You'll die slow," Jared said. "It's clean." Charlotte laughed. It came out raw, like something scraped from her soul. It wasn't humor. It wasn't madness. It was survival. Clean? There was nothing clean about dying alone in the woods, feeding wild beasts, your name forgotten, your bones gnawed. "You really think this place will bury me?" she said. Thomas glanced at Jared. She's cracked open," Charlotte said. "And if I haunt this mountain, boys, I'll start with you." That unsettled them. Jared spat again. Thomas turned his back too quickly. They left without another word. The sound of hooves faded fast. Then the wind returned, threading itself between trees, howling low and mournful. Charlotte tilted her head back and closed her eyes. No prayers, no sobs, just breath. She didn't expect rescue. She didn't expect mercy. But she wouldn't give them the pleasure of watching her shatter. The cold crept in first, slick and quiet like a thief. It found her fingertips, her ears, her throat. She remembered stories about people freezing to death. How? In the end, it felt like warmth. A trick, a slow drowning in snow. Hours passed, maybe more. Time didn't matter. What mattered was the silence. Until it ended. At first, it was only a sound. A soft pad, a pause. Then another. A faint rustle of branches. A snort. A growl. Close. She opened her eyes. The cave had darkened behind her. Dusk was falling fast and thick. The air smelled sharper now. She couldn't explain it, but something had changed. Something was watching. The first shape moved between the trees. Large, gray, silent. A wolf. It stepped into the half-light, eyes gleaming amber. Its breath steamed from its jaws like smoke from a furnace. Charlotte held hers. Another emerged behind it. Then another. She was prey. Her body knew it, even if her mind denied it. And yet, she didn't tremble. She burned. Somewhere beneath the fear, beneath the bruises and rope and cold, something ancient stirred. She thought of her mother, of her grandmother, of women who buried children and survived, who stood beside pyres and didn't flinch. She remembered a story her grandmother whispered once of a ghost woman tied to a pine, who tore herself free and walked in a legend. If this is my end, Charlotte thought, let them choke on my bones. The lead wolf growled, low and warning. Its body tensed. Then, a sound cut through the trees. Not loud, just deliberate. A boot against stone. The wolves froze. Charlotte turned her head slightly. Someone was there at the tree line. A shape, tall, still, cloaked in furs. She blinked snow from her lashes. The man stepped into view. He didn't speak. He carried a bow, a quiver over one shoulder. He wore no badge, no emblem, no Western hat. Just braids down his shoulders and a face like carved granite. Weathered, solemn, watchful. One of the wolves growled again. The man knelt slowly, deliberately, and struck flint against steel. A flame jumped to life in his palm. The wolves didn't like fire. They backed into the shadows, one by one, until the cave's mouth held only the dark. Charlotte sagged against the tree, breath ragged. Her vision swam. The man approached without hurry. His eyes never left hers. He crouched, said nothing. Then, with careful fingers, he reached into his belt, pulled a blade, and began cutting the ropes. Charlotte's throat worked, but no words came. He looked up once, his voice quiet, low, deliberate. You not die today. Her breath hitched, not because she believed him, but because for the first time in days, maybe weeks, someone had said something kind. The ropes fell away. She slumped forward. He caught her gently, like she weighed nothing. As darkness swirled at the edges of her vision, she heard him whisper something in a language she didn't understand. And she didn't care what it meant. All that mattered was that she was still breathing. And someone had come. The cave swallowed the wind. Charlotte's body trembled, not just from cold, but from the exhaustion that crept into her bones like mold, slow, invasive, suffocating. The man who had cut her free moved beside her without a word. He knelt in front of the fire he had built, feeding it with dry sticks and pine needles he'd pulled from a hidden nook. The flames danced between them, casting gold over the stone walls, warming her bruised skin in patches. She sat slumped against the rock wall, her hands cradling a tin cup of water he had given her. Her fingers could barely curl around the metal. Her lips were cracked, raw, but she drank, sipped, like a dying thing relearning how to live. He hadn't asked questions, hadn't spoken beyond those first words, you not die today. Now, as the fire grew, he finally looked at her. Eyes like polished river stones studied her, curious but not unkind. Beneath the edge of his fur-lined coat, she caught the glint of bone beads. Scars crossed one cheek like lightning over dry plains. His face, though young, held storms. Name, he asked, voice steady. She blinked. The word felt like a pebble dropped into deep water. Charlotte. He nodded once. Tahu. She repeated it, testing the shape of it. Tahu. He gave the faintest of smiles. Close. They sat in silence again. The kind that wasn't awkward, just unhurried. As though neither of them had any reason to rush. As though the mountain itself held its breath for them. After a while, he reached into his pack and handed her something wrapped in hide. She unwrapped it carefully, revealing a slab of dark, dry meat. Pemmican, he said. Eat slow. It was bitter and chewy and awful. She gagged slightly. He chuckled a warm, rare sound. Better than wolf. Charlotte snorted. I'll take your word. He leaned back on his heels, watching her. What men did this? Her jaw stiffened. Kin of my late husband. Thought I'd get in the way of their land. Tahu's brow furrowed. He didn't press. Instead, he stirred the fire with a twig, making it crackle higher. They meant you to die slow, he said softly. Cowards! That word echoed in the cavern like judgment. She looked at him. Really looked. His clothes were worn, stitched with care. Feathers tied to his left braid. The smell of cedar and smoke clung to him. He moved like the wind, quiet, sure, dangerous only when crossed. What were you doing out there? She asked. Hunting. For deer. He didn't answer right away. Then, sometimes memories. She frowned. That's not a thing you can kill. No, he said, but sometimes you can chase them far enough away. That made her go quiet. He took a strip of meat for himself, chewed it thoughtfully. The fire cast shadows across his face. His eyes glinted in its light like something untamed. I didn't think anyone would come, she said after a while. They almost didn't, he answered. Crows brought me. She tilted her head. Crows. They talk when men leave wrong things in the snow. Her lips parted. Was that a story or a truth? With him, it might be both. I didn't cry, she whispered. Not once. I know. He said it without surprise, without praise. Just fact. As if he'd seen women like her before. Women who'd been broken but refused to fall apart. The wind outside howled. Inside, the fire held firm. Charlotte leaned her head back against the stone and let her eyes flutter, closed for a moment. The ache in her limbs dulled. Her throat still burned from thirst. Her lips still throbbed, but the silence here didn't feel like death anymore. It felt waiting. Tahu's voice came softer now, almost lost beneath the wind. You saw them. The wolves. He nodded. She opened her eyes. They were close. Ready. They would not take you. How can you know that? He shrugged. They knew I would come. Charlotte smiled faintly. You sure about that? He met her gaze. I am. She didn't know what to say to that. The certainty in his voice wasn't arrogance. It was belief. Not in himself, but in the world, in something older and deeper. Didn't think you people came down this far anymore, she said after a moment. He raised a brow. You people. She winced. I didn't mean. I know, he said. And still. I meant Lakota, she clarified. He nodded slowly. Some still wander. Most stay. I come back to this mountain once each winter. What? He hesitated, then said, My sister was taken, when I was young, by traitors. We tracked them too late. Charlotte looked down. I'm sorry. Don't be. That was many winters ago. Still, I return. Listen for her name in the trees. That hit something inside her. A familiar ache. I stayed with my husband longer than I should have, she admitted. He wasn't kind. Tao didn't look surprised. He only waited. He drank. Yelled. Once tried to push me from the loft. Her hands gripped the hide-wrapped meat tighter. I should have left. But I didn't. Not until a bull took him. Sometimes leaving is harder than dying. She looked up sharply. But he wasn't mocking her. He meant it. She took a breath. After that, his cousins came sniffing around. Acted like they were helping. But they wanted the land. They didn't care if I was breathing or buried. They chose the cave. They chose wrong. He smiled again. A rare thing, but it warmed the stones. Outside, the wind died down a little. The hush that followed was sacred. Why'd you help me? She asked. Tahu stretched his legs toward the fire. Because you're still here. She frowned. That's not an answer. It is. They sat with that for a time. Eventually, Charlotte shifted, wincing. Her body was stiff, sore but still hers. Will they come back? She asked. Tao didn't answer right away. Then, quietly, if they do, we'll be ready. She nodded. Sleep crept in, slow and silent. As her head dipped, she caught the last flicker of his gaze on her. Not watchful, not suspicious. Protective, curious even, and something else. Respect. That night, in the mouth of the cave, she didn't dream of wolves or betrayal. She dreamed of fire and braids and a mountain wind that carried stories in its teeth. She dreamed of being seen, and somewhere, far below that dream, a single question echoed in a language she didn't know. Why did you live? When morning came, she would start to find the answer. The morning broke without apology. A pale light filtered through skeletal trees, cold and thin as glass. Snow still clung to the rocks, but the sky had cleared, and in that silence, the world seemed both too large and too still. Charlotte woke slowly. Her joints ached, her throat was raw, but she was alive. She blinked up at the cave's stone ceiling, where icicles hung like teeth. The fire had burned low, just embers now, and beside it, Tahu sat cross-legged, eyes closed, hands resting on his knees. She studied him for a moment. He looked carved from earth and bone. Quiet strength in his shoulders, stillness in his breath. When he opened his eyes, she flinched. "I wasn't watching you sleep," she said quickly. "I was," he replied. She blinked. "What for?" "To see if you'd wake." Charlotte pushed herself upright, grunting. "Disappointed?" He shook his head once, slowly. Relieved. Outside, the snow crunched beneath a paw, then another. A red fox darted past the mouth of the cave, its tail a flash of fire. It didn't stop, just vanished into the woods. "I'm not staying here," Charlotte said. Tao didn't move. "You shouldn't walk far." "I don't care. I gotta go back." He tilted his head. "To what?" "To what's mine." Silence stretched. "They took everything," she said. "My land, my name, my voice. And now they'll brag about how they fed me to wolves and laughed around the fire like it's just another story." Tahu looked into the ashes. "You think they'll welcome you?" "I don't need welcome. I just need them to see I'm not dead." He stood, brushing frost from his coat. "Then we walk." She wasn't ready. Her legs were stiff, her ribs bruised. But she stood anyway, jaw clenched, eyes set on the trees beyond. Tahu handed her his blanket, then a carved stick. "For walking. And hitting, if you must." She grinned, despite the ache. "I'll aim high." They stepped into the snow. The cold greeted them like an old enemy, wrapping around their ankles, biting at exposed skin. But it wasn't the same cold that had tried to take her. This one she could fight. This one she could outwalk. The path down the mountain was narrow, winding, unforgiving. Tahu moved like he'd walked it 100 times, even with no tracks to follow. Charlotte lagged behind at first, but she forced each step, refused to fall. Hours passed in silence, broken only by birdsong and the occasional crack of ice beneath their boots. She watched the way he scanned the trees, alert, cautious, always calculating. He moved with the stillness of someone who knew the woods spoke, if you listened. "How long have you lived out here?" she asked during one pause. He didn't look at her. "Long enough to know where the lies live." "And where's that?" "Under most men's tongues." She laughed, sharp and bitter. "Ain't that the truth?" Later, they crossed a shallow stream frozen at the edges. Tahu paused, crouched, and placed his palm against a stone near the water. Charlotte waited. "You praying?" "No. Listening." "To what?" "Tracks." She squinted. "There's nothing there." "There's always something," he murmured. He stood. "We're not alone." That stopped her. "Animals." He met her gaze. Not the kind with fur. Her grip tightened on the walking stick. They kept moving, faster now. An hour later, she saw movement ahead, figures darting through the trees, just far enough to stir dread. She turned to Tahu. He nodded once. Charlotte's heart pounded, her breath turning sharp. They came without warning. 3 men in worn coats, guns slung lazily at their hips, laughter spilling ahead of them like oil. Bounty hunters, by the look of them. Not local. Hungry-eyed, too clean for miners, too mean for soldiers. Tahu stepped between them and Charlotte before they could speak. One of the men, tall with a reddish beard, grinned. "Look what we got here. A real Indian and a ghost." Charlotte didn't blink. "Boys, I swear to God, if you think you're robbing me, you're too late. I've already been stripped down to the bones." The man laughed. "Not looking to rob you, sweetheart. Just curious how a lady ends up crawling out of the Wolf Mountains with a savage for a guide." Another man muttered. "Could fetch something, though. Woman like that. Tied nice and proper." Tahu's voice was calm. "Leave now." "Or what?" No reply. Charlotte didn't breathe. Her fingers curled around the stick. The red-bearded one took a step forward. Didn't hear the lady say she didn't want company. Tahu moved. It wasn't fast. It was precise. An arrow appeared in his hand and disappeared into the man's thigh in one breath. The scream tore through the trees. Charlotte ducked just as a second man raised his revolver. She swung her stick hard and high, catching him across the jaw. He stumbled, and Tahu followed. Knee, elbow, palm, movement so fluid it looked like dancing. But it ended with the man face down in the snow, moaning. The third man ran. Charlotte stood panting, staring at the one she'd hit. Blood dripped from his mouth onto the white ground. Is he dead? No, Tahu said. She exhaled. Good. Then stomped once on his hand. Now he won't be shooting anyone else either. Tahu gave her a look. 2 feathers. She blinked. What? You asked before. If you kill someone, do you get a feather? She stared at him. You get 2. She laughed, full and sharp. And for the first time in days, it wasn't bitter. They left the bounty hunters groaning behind them and continued down the trail. The world grew warmer as they descended. Trees grew taller, closer, and soon smoke curled in the distance. Town! Charlotte stopped when she saw it, chest heaving. She hadn't realized how much she feared this moment until now. The town looked smaller than she remembered, but it was her town, her soil, her name buried in the deeds. Her memories soaked into the wood of the church and the floorboards of the saloon. Tahu stepped beside her. You sure? She didn't answer at first. Then, quietly, I'm not the same woman they buried. He said nothing. I'm tired of being afraid of ghosts, she added. Then go show them who the ghost really is. Charlotte inhaled deeply. The smoke carried hints of horses, oil, and pine. She closed her eyes and whispered, Let's finish this. Tahu didn't follow as she took the first step forward. He only watched, eyes sharp, ready. Behind her, the mountain loomed. Ahead, the town waited. And Charlotte, scarred, bruised, changed, walked into it with a storm in her veins. The town looked like a painting left out in the rain. Familiar lines smeared by time and memory. Charlotte walked down the center of the muddy street, boots dragging just enough to remind herself she was still flesh and blood. Buildings hunched under their own weight, windows staring blankly as she passed. Few souls stirred so early, but those who did stopped and stared like they'd seen a ghost. She didn't blame them. Her coat hung from her like shed skin. Her hair, once pinned and braided, now fell in tangled ropes around her face. Bruises bloomed along her cheekbone, and one sleeve was tied off where it had ripped above the elbow. But her spine was straight, and her eyes were clear, clearer than they'd ever been. Behind her, Tahu lingered just past the edge of town, near the willows. He had said nothing after they reached the outskirts, simply nodded once and melted into the shadows. This was her road to walk, and he respected it. Charlotte stopped outside the saloon. The doors still swung crooked on their hinges. The sign overhead, once gold-leafed and proud, now hung chipped and leaning. She remembered stepping over its threshold as a newlywed, dressed in borrowed lace and wearing hope like a badge. Now, her hand hovered over the door. Inside, laughter. She pushed it open. The warmth hit her first, fire crackling in the hearth, the sour-sweet stink of old beer and damp wool. Cigarette smoke curled like lazy snakes under the ceiling. 3 men leaned around a table near the bar, cards in hand, whiskey in reach. Jared Cole sat among them, his boots kicked up on a crate, half his shirt unbuttoned like he owned the air itself. Thomas stood near the bar, arguing over money with a red-faced man she didn't recognize. The moment they saw her, the room tilted. Jared froze, cards slipping from his fingers. Thomas went pale. Charlotte stepped forward, boots thudding softly across the warped floor. "Morning," she said, voice low and even. "Hope I'm not interrupting." Silence answered. She let the pause grow sharp enough to draw blood. "Problem, boys?" she asked. "You look like you've seen a corpse walk in." Thomas finally found his voice. You left me tied to a tree like an old dog you didn't want anymore," she said, every word smooth and bitter. "In a wolf cave. In winter." A few patrons stirred, shifting in their seats. Eyes darted from the bruises on her skin to the steel in her gaze. "Must not have tied the knots tight enough," Jared said. He tried to smile. It sat poorly on his face. Charlotte's hand went to her hip. She wasn't armed, but that didn't matter. Her presence was the weapon. "You meant to kill me." "It ain't what you think," Thomas stammered. She looked him dead in the eye. I think you two cowards wanted me gone so you could take what wasn't yours. You're talking crazy, Jared said. Ain't no one gonna believe a woman who just stumbles and out of the cold. Rant in. I have the rope burns, she snapped. The bruises. The scars. You want to see them? He hesitated. From the doorway, a voice cut through the room like flint. She speaks truth. Tahu stepped inside, his presence quiet but undeniable. The room shifted around him. The fire hissed in the hearth. A single feather trailed from his braid. She was left to die, he said, eyes locked on Jared. But the land refused her death. The sheriff appeared then, summoned by whispers, or maybe just the weight of justice dragging him from his bunk. His badge caught the firelight as he strode into the room. What's going on here? He asked, taking in the tension like a man smelling smoke just before the flames. Charlotte turned to him. Sheriff, I need you to listen carefully. He looked her up and down. Ma'am, you look like hell. I was left for dead by these men, she said, voice firm. They dragged me into the mountains, tied me to a tree in front of a wolf den, walked away laughing. The sheriff blinked. That true. She's mad. Jared barked. You know her, Sheriff. Her husband died. She's grieving, confused. She's not confused, Tahu said. She's risen. The sheriff looked between them, jaw twitching. I was supposed to be buried in snow and teeth, Charlotte said. Instead, I came back. And I'm not here for pity. I'm here for justice. Someone coughed. A chair scraped back. Tom, the sheriff asked. Is this true? Thomas shifted on his heels. We meant to scare her. That's all. We figured maybe she'd just disappear a while. Give the land back. Charlotte stepped closer, her boots now inches from Jared's. You thought I'd vanish. You thought no one would care. She's lying, Jared muttered. She ain't right in the head. Then why does she stand here and you sit there shaking? The sheriff asked quietly. Jared stood. Quick. Foolish. I don't gotta sit through this farce, he snapped, reaching for his coat. I got work to. Charlotte moved first. The stick she carried from the mountain cracked across his knee. He collapsed with a shout, clutching his leg. The room gasped. Now you know how it feels to be powerless, she said. The sheriff stepped between them. That's enough. She backed away, breathing hard. The sheriff turned to Jared and Thomas. I'm placing both of you under arrest for attempted murder. You're lucky she didn't finish the job herself. Jared spat blood. She's crazy. The sheriff ignored him. Two deputies hauled the cousins away, cursing and howling, their boots dragging through sawdust. Charlotte stood in the silence they left behind, her pulse slowing. The fire crackled again. Someone in the back muttered, damn right. Tahu came to stand beside her. Was that justice? She asked. No, he said, but it's a start. Outside, dawn had bloomed in full, pale gold bleeding over rooftops, washing the mud in soft light. The world looked reborn, and in a way, so did she. They stood there, side by side, as the town stirred. The sheriff returned a moment later. Land deeds still in your name, he said. They tried filing claims behind your back, but nothing stuck. Charlotte nodded. Good. You sure you want to stay? He asked. After all this? She looked down the street, saw the church, the mercantile, the old wooden fence Samuel had never fixed. Then she looked at Tahu. I might not stay forever, she said, but I'm going to rebuild what's mine. Tahu didn't speak, but the look in his eyes said he believed her. They walked out of the saloon together, the door swinging shut behind them. She paused on the porch, breathing in the morning. The sun warmed her face, and for once, she didn't feel hunted or hollow. Tahu adjusted his quiver. You leaving? She asked. For now. You always come and go like smoke? He smiled. Only when I've seen what I came to see. She touched the carved walking stick he'd given her. Thank you. You saved yourself, he said. But you reminded me how. He nodded once, slow and solemn, then handed her a small, carved feather, bone white, delicately etched, for strength. She looked at it, at him, and held back the tears. You ever coming back? He looked at the mountains. Winds always bring stories. I follow them. He turned to leave, then paused. You walk like someone who won't be forgotten. She smiled. Good, because I've got a hell of a story now. He disappeared into the trees without another word. Charlotte stood in the rising sun, the town slowly waking around her. She held the feather tight, her jaw firm, her spirit unbroken. The mountains still loomed. So did the past. But from that moment on, she would no longer be remembered as the widow left to die. She'd be remembered as the woman who came back. If this story moved you, don't forget to like, subscribe, and share your thoughts in the comments. Because stories like hers, they deserve to be heard. The canyon was quiet, too quiet for the living. Mary Linton staggered forward, one hand clutching her squirming baby to her chest, the other gripping a broken wagon, spoke like it was a weapon that might mean something out here. Her lips were cracked. Blood trickled from a shallow cut above her brow, already crusted from yesterday's sun. Her dress, once a proud Sunday blue, was now a shredded, dirt-stained ghost of itself. Behind her, 10-year-old Joey dragged a burlap sack over the sandstone, each step slower than the last. His knees were scraped, and his eyes had taken on a distant, hollow look. He hadn't spoken in over an hour. Mary glanced back at him, every step like pulling her body through syrup. "Just a little farther, baby," she whispered, but the words stuck to her tongue like dry cotton. They'd been walking for hours, or maybe days. Time didn't move the same when the sun ruled the sky like a tyrant. When the vultures started following them, Mary stopped counting. They were supposed to be ranchers. That's what Jackson had promised her when they left Arkansas with a cart full of tools and hearts stuffed with hope. He had said the land was generous out here. Untamed, yes, but not unkind. He had believed in it so fiercely that Mary dared to believe, too. Then the land baron's men showed up. It was about water. Always was. Jackson had dug a well on what he thought was free land. Turns out it belonged, technically, legally, and violently, to a man named Brackett, a cattle magnate who owned everything between the river and the mountains, including the law. Jackson didn't bow. Jackson had never bowed in his life. They shot him in front of Mary and the kids. Buried him in a shallow grave so the coyotes wouldn't have to dig far. Mary had screamed until her voice bled. That's when they gagged her, tied her to the wagon, and drove her and the children deep into the canyon. They didn't say why they didn't kill her. One of the men laughed as he unhitched the horses and left the wagon to rot. Let the buzzards sort out. She had no weapons, no food, and no shoes. Just two children, the clothes on their backs, and whatever stubborn fire hadn't yet been choked out of her. Joey tripped on a rock and crumpled into the sand. Mary turned and dropped beside him. "Joey," she rasped, brushing sweat-matted curls from his forehead. "You gotta get up, baby. You have to. I'm tired, Mama. I know. I am too. But we can't stop." He didn't move. She reached into the sack and pulled out the last thing she had, half a dried apple. She tore in two, handed him the bigger piece. He didn't smile, just chewed slowly, the motion mechanical. Overhead, a shadow crossed the sun. Mary looked up. A vulture circled low. The sight made her chest tighten with a strange, bitter sort of rage. "Not yet," she muttered. "Not today." She rose, hoisting the baby higher. The little one, Bonnie, had stopped crying. That scared Mary more than the howling at night or the tracks near their sleeping spot. Bonnie was too quiet, too still, like she'd already started to slip into whatever lay beyond this godforsaken world. They walked on. The canyon walls grew steeper, the air thinner. The sun painted everything in colors that didn't feel real: burnt golds, bleeding reds, dead blue shadows. Every now and then, Mary thought she saw movement in the distance, a flicker of something, maybe a rider, but when she blinked, it vanished. She started to talk to herself. To Jackson. "You bastard," she whispered. "You just had to build that well. Had to prove you were a man. Now look what you did." Her knees buckled. She hit the ground hard, cradling the baby against her chest. "I'm sorry," she whispered. "I didn't mean that." A tear slid down her cheek and vanished into the dust. Something crunched in the sand behind her. She turned fast, too fast. Her vision spun. Joey's head lifted slightly, and for a second, she thought he was smiling. A shadow moved at the canyon's mouth. Not an animal, not a bird, a man. Mary fumbled for the wagon spoke, dragged herself to her feet, arms shaking. "Stay back," she croaked. The man came closer, slow and deliberate. He wore deerskin leggings, a long, weathered coat fringed with bone and feathers, and his face, painted with white streaks, was unreadable. His long hair was tied with strips of rawhide. He didn't speak, just looked at her, then at the children. Mary held the spoke tighter. You want to finish the job, do it. But I swear to God, I'll take your eye out first. The man's head tilted slightly, not in mockery, more like curiosity. Then he dismounted with the grace of someone who didn't waste motion. He looked at Joey, at the baby, at Mary. Finally, he spoke. Do you wish to live? The voice was deep, steady, as if it came from the canyon itself. Mary blinked, unsure she had imagined it. Her mouth opened, but her throat cracked dryly. The baby whimpered. Do you wish to live? He asked again. Her grip on the spoke loosened. She looked at Joey, at his cracked lips, at Bonnie's limp fingers. And then she nodded. Yes, she whispered. Please. The man walked to his horse, pulled a water skin from the saddle, and tossed it gently. Mary caught it clumsily, almost dropped it. She opened it with trembling fingers and held it to Bonnie's lips first, then Joey's. Then, finally, she took a sip herself. It tasted like forgiveness. The man knelt beside Joey, inspected the boy's feet. Without a word, he cut strips from his own coat and wrapped them like makeshift moccasins. Joey winced but didn't cry. Mary watched, still unsure if this was real. Who are you? She asked. He stood. Tatsii. What do you want? He looked at her, and for a long moment, she thought he might walk away. Instead, he said, The buzzards aren't patient. We should move. Where? Somewhere they won't find you. Why? She asked, almost a challenge. Tatsii looked at the sky. Because they left you for the canyon. But the canyon doesn't always listen. He turned, mounted his horse, and extended a hand. Mary hesitated. Trust wasn't something she had left. Men had stolen everything from her. But when she looked into Tatsii's eyes, she didn't see the usual hunger or cold indifference. She saw fire, the kind that burned but didn't consume. She placed her hand in his. He pulled her up effortlessly. She held the baby in one arm, gripped the saddle horn with the other. Joey tried to follow on foot, but his legs gave out. Tatsii swung down again, picked the boy up like he weighed nothing, and placed him behind Mary. As they rode through the narrowing canyon, Mary turned to look back at the place they had almost died. A vulture landed on the spot where they'd rested. It stared at her. She stared back. Not today. They rode on, shadows growing longer, the sun softening its cruel glare. The air began to cool. Somewhere in the distance, a coyote howled. Tatsii didn't speak again for a long time. But Mary's heart, beaten, bruised, but not broken, started to thump with something she hadn't felt in days. Hope, just a flicker. But sometimes a flicker's enough. The horse moved like a phantom across the canyon floor, hooves silent over sand and scrub. Mary clung tightly to Bonnie, the baby asleep in the crook of her arm, while Joey leaned in her back, arms wrapped around her waist, his small fingers gripping with quiet desperation. Tatsii rode ahead, his silhouette black against the darkening orange sky. He hadn't spoken in hours, but something about the way he moved, certain, deliberate, offered Mary more comfort than words could have. He knew this land like it was a living thing, like he could hear it breathing. Night settled over them like a curtain, bringing with it a whisper of cool wind and the call of night birds. Mary's limbs ached. Her back throbbed. Her mind swirled with questions she dared not ask yet. When they finally stopped, it was in a hidden hollow where spring bubbled up between slabs of smooth stone. Tatsii dismounted first, then helped Mary down, lifting Bonnie gently from her arms and cradling her with surprising tenderness. He passed the child back and gestured toward a flat, shaded patch near the spring. Sleep here. You'll be safe, he said, voice low, like a stone rolling downstream. Joey collapsed onto the ground without a word. Mary crouched beside him, brushing a hand over his dust-caked hair, then turned toward the warrior. Why are you helping us? She asked quietly. Tatsii didn't answer at first. He removed a pouch from his belt and sprinkled herbs into the water, kneeling beside it. The scent, sharp, earthy, filled the air. Because I've buried children too, he said at last. not looking at her. Mary blinked. Her throat closed. He set aside the pouch and reached into a leather bag, pulling out dried meat and flatbread. He laid it between them without fanfare. "Eat slowly," he said. "Your body forgot food." Mary nodded, unsure what else to do. She broke the bread in half and handed the larger piece to Joey, who mumbled something like thanks. After they ate, Tatsui built a fire with practiced ease. Sparks danced upward, vanishing into the stars. The smell of juniper wood mixed with the night air. Joey fell asleep first, curled up beside Bonnie, who barely stirred. Mary sat across the fire from Tatsui, watching him, unsure what to make of the man whose mercy had come not with fanfare, but with water, food, and silence. "You speak English well," she said. "I lived among settlers for a time. By choice." No, his eyes flicked toward the firelight. "The army took me when I was young. Taught me to fight, to track, to obey." She stared. "You were a scout?" "I was a weapon." Silence stretched between them. "I had a husband," she said. "Jackson. He wasn't a bad man. Just proud. Too proud. He thought we could start over out here. Thought if we worked hard enough, kept to ourselves." "Pride is a dangerous seed," Tatsui murmured. She nodded. "They shot him, right in front of me, then dumped us like trash. I think they wanted me to die slow." "You didn't." "Not yet." She hesitated, then asked, "Why do you live out here?" "I don't live. I pass through. The land gives. I take what I need. I help who I can. Even white women." Tatsui's gaze didn't waver. "Even mothers who fight." Mary felt her cheeks burn, not from shame, but from the recognition in his voice. The way he saw her, not as a victim, but as someone who refused to die. The wind shifted. Tatsui rose suddenly, head turning toward the west. He knelt and pressed his fingers to the dirt, then sniffed the air. "What is it?" "Dust trail. Riders." Mary's breath hitched. "Them. Likely." He moved fast, packed his gear, stomped out the fire, then turned to Mary. "There's a cave. Not far. Hidden. Take the children. Stay silent." She stood, her hands already shaking. "And you?" "I'll meet them before they meet you." "Tatsui." "No argument," he said. "If they see you, they will not show mercy." Mary nodded, gathered the children, and followed him into the dark. They climbed along a narrow goat path until they reached a curtain of ivy hanging over what looked like a sheer rock face. Tatsui pushed through it and revealed the entrance to a shallow cave, masked by stone and shadow. It smelled of damp moss and old earth. "You stay here. No light. No sound. Understand?" Mary nodded. He handed her a small knife. "It's not for fighting," he said. "It's for surviving." She looked at the blade, then at him. "Do you think we'll need it?" "I think they are closer than we want." He turned, disappearing into the night like smoke. Time stretched in the cave, strange and suffocating. The children slept fitfully, curled against each other. Mary crouched near the entrance, the knife in her hand, straining to hear any sound that didn't belong to the canyon. Then, faintly, she heard it. Gunfire. 3 shots spaced out. Then silence. She held her breath. A 4th shot rang out, closer this time. Then nothing. The seconds crawled by. An hour. Maybe 2. Her muscles cramped, but she didn't move. When Tatsui finally appeared at the cave's edge, she almost cried out. Blood streaked his left arm, and he walked with a slight limp. She ran to him, grabbing his good shoulder. "You're hurt." "Not badly." "What happened?" 4 riders. I stopped 3, and the 4th. Tatsui looked away. "Got past me." Mary's stomach dropped. "He knows about the cave?" "Maybe. Maybe not. But you can't stay here." "Then where?" "There's a Navajo settlement 2 days north. They'll take you in. Protect you. And you." "I can't go there." "Not anymore." Mary didn't press. She cleaned his wound with cloth torn from her skirt, working in silence. When she finished, she looked up at him. "Thank you." He shrugged. "I gave mercy once. It was not returned. Doesn't mean I stopped giving it." She watched him closely. "They took someone from you." His jaw tightened. "My wife. My daughter. The Bluecoats mistook our home for a rebel camp. They burned it. I buried bones." Mary's chest ached. "Then why save me?" "Because grief is a river. If it carries you too long, you forget how to swim. You drown. I won't drown. She placed a hand gently over his. I won't either. Dawn crept over the canyon in pale gold and lavender. Mary fed the children the last of the food, while Tatsai scouted the trail. When he returned, his expression was grim. They're searching, he said. Closer now. He led them through twisting paths across dry riverbeds. Always listening, always watching. Mary noticed how Joey stayed near Tatsai now, mimicking his steps, asking questions in hushed tones. The warrior began answering, teaching him how to tell a rabbit track from a coyote's, how to read the sky for weather. Joey laughed once, a short bark of joy, and Tatsai cracked the faintest smile. Mary stared. He's smiling, she teased. Tatsai grunted. Don't get used to it. The horse didn't like it last time. Joey giggled. They stopped beneath a rock overhang that night. Tatsai caught a hare, roasted it with herbs, and handed Mary the first piece. This is more than survival, she said. This feels human again. Tatsai stared into the fire. It's not the land that kills us. It's the people on it. I was one of those people once, Mary whispered. No, you were just asleep. Now you're awake. She looked at him, surprised. He met her gaze. And you fight for your young. That's the strongest thing anyone can do. She blinked away sudden tears, afraid of what it meant that his voice reached something buried deep inside her. Later that night, Mary couldn't sleep. She stepped away from the fire and found Tatsai sitting beneath the stars, sharpening a blade. I was afraid of you, she said. You should be. She sat beside him. But I'm not. He said nothing, just kept sharpening the blade. They'll keep coming, won't they? Yes. Mary looked at the stars. Then we keep moving. We'll reach the settlement by nightfall tomorrow. From there, you'll be safe. And you? I'll draw them away. She turned to him, panic blooming. Alone. It's my fight. Mary reached for his hand. He didn't pull away. It's mine now, too. For the first time, he looked shaken, not by fear, but by the truth of her words. She had been a settler's wife, then a widow, then a ghost walking through the desert. But now she was something else. And Tatsai saw it. A fire sparked in her eyes. A resolve. He nodded once, almost to himself. Then we move at first light. As the stars wheeled overhead and the wind whispered down the canyon, Mary finally slept. Not because she was no longer afraid, but because she knew she wouldn't run anymore. The buzzards would have to wait. By sunrise, the wind had shifted. Tatsai didn't speak as he saddled the horse and packed their meager supplies with mechanical precision. Mary could feel it in the air, the stillness before something broke. Bonnie slept on her shoulder, warm and quiet. Joey stood beside her, lips pressed together, watching Tatsai like a soldier waiting for orders. No one had to say it. The enemy was close. The settlement lay only a half-day north. But between them and safety stretched flatland. Open space with no cover, no rocks, no trees, just scrub and sand. If the gang was tracking, that stretch would be a death march. Tatsai knelt and drew a line in the dirt with a stick. They'll come from here, he said, tapping a spot southwest. 4, maybe 5 riders. I saw the tracks. Mary looked at the boy. Joey and I, if we run. They'll find you, Tatsai said. They always find what bleeds. He stood slowly and faced her. I'll draw them south, toward the ridge. No, her voice surprised even herself. Not without me. Tatsai stared. I've watched you fight, she said. But I can't hide anymore. Not while they ride free. Not after what they did. He didn't smile, but his eyes changed just slightly. He saw her now not as a survivor, but as something sharper. Joey raised his hand timidly. What about me? Mary crouched and cupped his face. You take Bonnie. Ride hard. Follow the canyon wall north. Don't stop till you see smoke. The people there will help you. I can fight. You'll fight one day, she whispered, brushing hair from his eyes. But today you live. That's how you fight. Tatsai handed Joey a small bone pendant on a leather string. Show them this. They'll know I sent you. Joey took it with solemn eyes, then climbed onto the horse. Mary lifted Bonnie into his lap, tightened the blanket around them both, and kissed their foreheads with trembling lips. Tatsiai slapped the horse's flank. It galloped off in a cloud of dust, carrying the last of Mary's innocence with it. By midday, she and Tatsiai had reached a narrow ridge overlooking the flatlands. From there, they could see dust spiraling up, hoofbeats in the distance coming fast. Mary crouched low, heart pounding like a drum inside her ribs. Her palms were slick. She gripped the knife he'd given her days ago, the blade now sharpened to a lethal edge. "They won't talk, will they?" she asked. No, he checked the tension of his bow. Brackett's kind only speaks when they're laughing or bleeding. Her mouth tightened. "Then we'll make them bleed." Tatsiai nodded. They waited behind a cluster of rocks until the first rider came into view, a lean, hard-eyed man with a scar across his neck. Two more followed, and then Brackett himself, riding tall, a rifle across his lap. That same sadistic smirk stretched across his face. Mary's pulse went still. "That's him," she whispered. "That's the one who killed Jackson. The one who dragged us into the canyon." Tatsiai knocked an arrow. "The one who left you for the buzzards." The wind picked up. Then the silence shattered. Tatsiai loosed the first arrow. It sliced through the air and struck the lead rider in the throat. He toppled backward, blood blooming across his chest. The second shot cracked from Mary's rifle, a bullet to the shoulder of the next outlaw, who spun off his horse, screaming. Brackett shouted something, wheeling his mount and firing wildly in their direction. Bullets pinged off the rocks, one passing so close to Mary's head she felt its heat. They ducked low. "We move," Tatsiai growled, and they ran along the ridge, dodging behind boulders, leading the remaining riders into the narrow gap between stone walls. A natural choke point, a killing ground. Mary skidded behind a boulder, breathing hard. She could taste metal in her mouth. Tatsiai climbed higher, positioning himself above the path. He motioned to her hold. The third rider charged in, yelling like a madman. Tatsiai dropped from above, landing on the man like a falling mountain. They hit the ground hard, bodies rolling in a violent tangle. The horse bolted. The man pulled a knife, slashing wildly, but Tatsiai struck with precision. 3 punches, quick and brutal. Bone cracked. Then he turned the outlaw's own blade on him, plunging it deep. Brackett galloped through the gap next, alone now. Mary stepped out into the path. He reined in fast, eyes wide. "Well," he said with a grin, rifle swinging toward her, "look who crawled out of the grave." "You missed the grave," Mary said. He pulled the trigger, but nothing fired. The hammer clicked empty. Tatsiai's arrow thudded into the rifle, knocking it from Brackett's hands. The man yelled and jumped from the saddle, drawing a pistol, but Mary was already on him. She tackled him like fury given flesh, knife flashing. He backhanded her, sent her sprawling into the dust. But the rage didn't stop. She rolled, came up bleeding, and swung again, the blade slicing across his thigh. Brackett howled, lunging at her. They wrestled in the dirt, kicking, cursing, clawing. He got on top, fist raised. Then Tatsiai grabbed him from behind and dragged him off. "No!" Mary screamed. "He's mine!" Tatsiai didn't move, just held the man firm while Mary stood, panting, shaking, knife dripping. Brackett sneered, even through the pain. "You don't got the guts, woman." Mary stepped close. "They said that about my husband, too." And then she drove the blade into his heart. He gasped, eyes wide with disbelief, then slumped forward, lifeless. The wind stilled. Mary stood there for a long moment, staring down at the body. Her hands trembled. Blood soaked her dress. But she didn't cry. Tatsiai let go and stepped back. "It's done," he said. "No," she replied. "It's begun." They buried the bodies in shallow graves, not for mercy, but to keep the animals away. Mary cleaned her hands in the spring nearby, watching the red water swirl into the rocks. When she returned, Tatsiai was crouched beside the fire he'd built from broken branches. "Your boy made it," he said. She looked up sharply. "Smoke," he added, rising in the north. The settlement saw him. She closed her eyes in relief. "You won't come with me, will you?" she asked. Tatsiai poked the fire with a stick. "I don't belong in houses. You belong where you're needed." He looked at her then, the the firelight dancing in his eyes. You don't need me anymore. Mary sat beside him, legs aching, soul raw. I don't know what I am now, she said softly. You're not a widow, he said. Not anymore. They watched the stars rise together, the night sky enormous and endless. Will they come again? She asked. They always do. Then I'll be ready next time. He stood, pulled the blanket from his shoulders, and draped it over hers. You will. By morning, Mary rode north toward her children, alone but not the same. Totsie I watched her go from the ridge, a silent sentinel under the rising sun. The buzzards circled far behind, waiting for scraps. But there was nothing left for them.
The sky bled over Carter's Ridge in strokes of rust and rose, casting long shadows over the funeral mound. Eliza Carter stood still as a statue beside her husband's grave, her black veil clinging to her wind-chapped cheeks like sorrow-made silk. The preacher's words faded into the wind, carried off across the plains like so many things that couldn't stay. She hadn't cried. Not once. The tears had dried up the moment the telegram arrived 2 weeks back. Lieutenant James Carter killed in action. They said he died a hero, outnumbered, outgunned, refusing to fall until the last man under his command was safe. A fine story. But Eliza knew what the war truly took. It didn't care for heroes. The mourners were few. Most folks around the ridge had no love for the Carter family, and even less for James, whose quiet defiance had earned the wrong kind of attention in a territory ruled by rifles and whispered deals. His brothers, Clay and Malcolm, stood at a distance, too close to the whiskey flask and too far from grief. Their eyes barely flicked toward Eliza as the last shovelful of dirt landed atop the mound. "Let's get her inside," Clay muttered, voice thick with the effort pretending to care. "Cold's coming." "I'm fine," Eliza said, her voice dry as the prairie grass. "Go on. I'll catch up." Clay shrugged and turned away, leaving tracks in the dirt like a wolf with no prey left to chase. The sun dipped lower. Eliza let the silence settle, watching the prairie stretch into nothing and the wind ripple through it like a sigh from God himself. Then, slowly, she knelt, brushing a stray stone from a mound. "You always hated this place," she whispered. "Told me it'd swallow me whole." She placed her hand flat over the earth. "Turns out you were wrong, James. I ain't that easy to bury." By nightfall, the house on Carter's Ridge had turned from somber to stifling. Clay and Malcolm returned inside with a swagger of men who mistook land deeds for righteousness. The fire popped in the hearth, casting golden shadows over the walls while supper sat untouched on the table. Eliza stood at the window, arms crossed, eyes scanning the horizon. There was a tension in her belly she couldn't name, a knowing that didn't come from reason, but from the bone. James had trusted his brothers to manage things in his absence. Land, livestock, the accounts. And now he was dead, and they were here, and nothing felt right. "You're looking mighty pale, Eliza," Malcolm said from behind, voice syrupy with something slicker than concern. "Come sit. Eat." "I'm not hungry." "Suit yourself," Clay said. "But you're going to need your strength. Lot of paperwork to sort." James didn't exactly leave things neat. "That's funny," she said, not turning. "James kept records of everything. Didn't trust either of you with a shovel, let alone his books." Clay's chair scraped against the floor. "What did you say?" She turned now, slowly, eyes hard. "I said, don't pretend you were close to him. You've been sniffing around this ranch like it's meat for the taquine. I see it. I smell it." Clay stepped forward. "You forget yourself." "No, I remember exactly who I am. Eliza Carter, James's wife. And legally, that makes me the heir to this land, whether you like it or not." A long silence fell. Even the fire seemed to stop crackling. Malcolm chuckled. "Well, ain't that a twist?" Clay's grin was a knife. "Don't worry, Eliza. We got all figured out." She didn't see the blow coming. 1 second she was standing, the next, darkness. She woke with a taste of blood in her mouth, and the stars spinning overhead like drunken fireflies. Her wrists were bound, rope cutting into her skin. The smell of horse sweat, tobacco, and stale piss told her all she needed before her eyes could focus. She was in a wagon, Canvas flapped overhead, and 2 men sat near the tailgate, rifles across their laps. Neither were her brothers-in-law. Worse, these were men without names, without honor, outlaws. Panic surged up her throat, hot and wild. She thrashed, kicked, cursed. One of the men turned. "Easy, girl. You'll spook the horses." "Let me go," she spat. "Where the hell am I?" Far enough that no one come looking, the man drawled. "Clay said you put up a fuss." Clay, that snake had sold her. "Why?" she whispered. "Why not just kill me?" The man scratched his beard. "You're pretty, and there's buyers out east who pay good coin for something like you." She froze. Her whole body trembled. "You're lying." The other man laughed. "You'll see." The wagon rolled on. Time lost meaning. Her thoughts ran in circles, memories of James, of their first ride across the ridge, of their wedding night under a stormy sky. Rage curled inside her chest like a starving animal. She wouldn't beg. She wouldn't cry. But she would not die in a cage. The next night, when they stopped to camp, she acted. They underestimated her, thought she was just some grieving widow. But grief sharpens. It hones. And Eliza had been sharpening for days. She waited until the sentry dozed off, firelight flickering low. Then she rolled toward a sharp rock she'd spotted hours earlier, sawing the rope against it until her wrist bled. When it finally snapped, she didn't hesitate. She lunged with the sentry's knife. He woke too late. Steel flashed. She cut his thigh deep. He roared, fell. The other outlaw bolted up, fumbling for his gun. Eliza ran. Branches tore at her dress. Briars scratched her arms. But she didn't stop. Behind her, shouting, a gunshot cracked through the trees. Then, a cry split the night. Not human, high-pitched, piercing. It echoed through the trees like a ghost made of war. The shouting stopped. Silence reigned. And then hoofbeats. Fast, controlled. From the darkness, a figure appeared, atop a painted horse, body wrapped in buckskin, face streaked with red and black. Feathers adorned his braid, and a long rifle sat across his back. He looked down at her with eyes like flint. Eliza fell to her knees, gasping. The rider didn't move, just watched. Behind them, the outlaw emerged, gun raised, teeth bared. The Cheyenne moved before the man could fire. A blur of motion, the thwack of a tomahawk. The outlaw crumpled. Eliza stared, heart pounding, breath ragged. The warrior turned to her. He dismounted, walked toward her in measured steps. No threat in his stance, but every inch of him said danger. He knelt before her and spoke. Not in English, not at first. Then slowly, carefully, in accented but clear words. "You are safe now." She stared. "Who are you?" He didn't answer right away. He stood, offered his hand. "Come," he said, "before others come." She hesitated. Behind her, the corpse. Before her, a stranger. But something in his eyes, calm, fierce, alive, drew her forward. She took his hand. The forest closed around them, the moon casting silver patterns on the trail as he led her into the unknown. And for the first time since a funeral, Eliza Carter did not feel like a widow. She felt like something more dangerous, like a woman reborn. The flames crackled low in the Cheyenne camp, casting flickering shadows across the leather-walled lodges and painted shields that hung like silent sentries. Smoke curled skyward, sweet with the scent of cedar and sage, drifting into the deep velvet of night. Eliza sat near one of the fires, wrapped in a deerskin cloak that didn't quite chase the cold from her bones. She hadn't spoken much since they arrived. The man who'd save her, she still didn't know his name, had led her through the woods like a ghost through water, neither slowing nor speaking. When she stumbled, he waited. When she panicked, he simply kept moving forward. Not once did he reach for her again, nor look at her with curiosity or lust. Only caution, maybe pity, that stung more than fear. Now, as she stared into the fire, the weight of it all settled like stones in her belly. Her husband was dead. Her family had sold her like livestock. She was surrounded by strangers, half a world from anything familiar, wearing borrowed clothes and borrowed time. Here, She looked up. An older woman, face weathered as sun-baked leather, offered her a wooden bowl. The stew inside steamed, thick, rich, fragrant. Eliza took it with shaking hands. "Thank you." The woman grunted, then walked off without a word. She hadn't been the only one watching. Eyes flitted her way, curious, wary. A few of the children whispered, nudged each other. The warriors kept their distance, their expressions unreadable. Only her savior seemed untouched by the weight of her presence. He sat across the fire, legs folded, head slightly bowed, carving something from bone with slow, deliberate strokes. His face bore the red paint of war, now faded and cracked, but no less fierce. His black hair was braided with beads and feathers. And though he said little, every line of him told stories Eliza couldn't begin to understand. After a while, she couldn't bear the silence. "You didn't have to help me." His hands didn't stop carving. "Yes, I did." "Why?" "Because I was there." He didn't look up, didn't elaborate. She frowned. That's not an answer. Finally, his eyes met hers, sharp as a hawk's. "You were alone, hurt, chased. I did not need more reason." She let the silence stretch again, tasting guilt and something else. Respect, maybe. "My name's Eliza Carter." He nodded once. "Tsunhotanka." She blinked. "That's Cheyenne. It means horse that thunders." Seems fitting. He gave no reaction, only returned to his carving. "You're not much for talking, are you?" she asked, with a tired half-smile. "I speak when needed." He paused. "But I listen always." She glanced toward the dark beyond the camp, the trees whispering secrets only they knew. "Then listen to this. I'm not some simpering thing in need of savon. I was get away before you showed up." His mouth twitched, almost a smile. "Yes, I saw. Very brave. Very loud." Eliza flushed. "I stabbed one. With a butter knife. It was a sharp butter knife." He raised an eyebrow. "Still butter knife." She stared at him, then laughed, short, startled. The sound surprised them both. For the first time, his face softened. "Why'd you bring me here?" she asked. "Safer than the woods." "I don't belong." "No, you do not." That should have hurt, but there was no malice in it. Just truth. "Do your people want me gone?" "Some do. They remember what soldiers did, what settlers took. They see your dress, your eyes, your skin. They do not trust." She looked down at her pale hands, dirt beneath the nails. "Can't blame them." "No." Another silence, but this one felt easier, like a silence between two people not afraid to share it. Later, under the blanket of stars, Eliza sat beside a small fire near the edge of the camp. Her thoughts kept circling like coyotes, snarling, restless, hungry. She heard footsteps approach and expected to sunk again. Instead, it was the old woman from before. "You think too much," she said, plopping down beside Eliza without invitation. "That's why your face all scrunched like rabbit in rain." Eliza blinked. "Excuse me." "You. Rabbit face." The woman pointed at her. "Thinking of dead man. Thinking of bad men. Not useful." Eliza gaped. Well, yes, but..." "You're alive." The woman poked her shoulder. "You breathe. You eat. You sit near fire. Good. Now stop rabbit face." "I thank you." The woman nodded, satisfied. "I am Nysa. I watched you. You have fight." Eliza chuckled. "You should have seen me with a rifle." Nysa leaned in. "You ride horse." "I can ride a buggy." Puff. Nysa waved a hand. "Buggy, not horse. Buggy is coward's wagon." Eliza scowled. "I'm not a coward." "Then ride like warrior. Tomorrow I teach. You fall off. You get up. That's how it works." Before Eliza could reply, Nysa stood and walked off, humming to herself. "She does that." Tsunk's voice said from behind. Eliza turned. "Just walks up and scolds strangers?" "No. She only does that to people she likes." "Well, I feel honored." She lost a daughter once. "To soldiers." Eliza's breath caught. "She sees you," he added. not just your skin. A sudden rustle came from the trees. T'Sunk's head snapped toward the sound, body coiled like a drawn bow. Then came a cry, sharp, urgent. A scout burst from the brush, breathless. He spoke fast in Cheyenne, pointing to the river. T'Sunk's face darkened. "What is it?" Eliza asked. "Men, on horses, guns, near water." Her blood turned to ice. "Outlaws." T'Sunk nodded once. "They follow you." She rose, fist clenched. "We have to run." He shook his head. "We do not run. We watch. If they come close, we warn them." "Warn them? They'll shoot on sight. Then we shoot first." She stared at him. The calm in his voice wasn't arrogance. It was certainty. An hour passed. Then, too, T'Sunk and a small group of warriors moved like shadows to the river's edge. Eliza waited with Nysa, heart pounding, ears strained for sounds that didn't belong. When the warriors returned, their silence was grim. "They saw us," T'Sunk said. "Turn back, but they will return." Eliza stood. "They won't stop. They know I'm alive. They'll keep coming." T'Sunk studied her. "Then we stop them." "Me," she scoffed. "What can I do?" "You are bait." Her eyes widened. "Pardon?" "They want you. Let them come close. Then we strike." "That's a terrible plan." "It is the only plan." Eliza crossed her arms. "I'm not keen on getting shot again." "You would rather run forever?" She didn't answer. Her silence was answer enough. In the morning, the sky burned gold. The warriors painted their faces. Eliza, dressed in simple buckskin now, hair braided back, looked like someone else in the mirror pool. Not a widow, not a prisoner. Something in between. T'Sunk stood beside her, fastening his rifle. "You are afraid," he said. "Damn right." "Good. Fear means you have something to lose." She met his eyes. "Do you?" He hesitated, then nodded once. "My people, my land, my honor. And me?" Another pause. "Maybe." She smiled just a little. "Good." They rode toward the ridge where the outlaws had been last seen. Eliza's hands gripped the reins, knuckles white. Nysa had kept her word. The horse didn't buck her once, but her heartbeat did. They dismounted in the trees. T'Sunk pointed. "There. We wait." Eliza crouched low, breath shallow. Voices. The outlaws rode in, 3 of them, including Clay. Her mouth went dry. He looked older, angrier, less sure. "Spread out," he barked. "She's close." "I can feel it." T'Sunk nodded. Now, the Cheyenne warriors rose from the brush like spirits made flesh. Eliza stood, rifle raised, hand steady. "Hello, Clay." He turned, stunned. "Eliza." She stepped into the clearing. "You sold me. Thought I'd die. But I didn't." His hand twitched toward his gun. "Don't," she said. Behind him, a warrior stepped forward. Arrow knocked. Clay froze. "Drop it." He did. "Walk away," she said. "Right now. And never come back. You'll never survive out here." "I already did." He lunged. Her shot rang out before he touched her. He hit the ground hard, clutching his leg, howling. T'Sunk moved fast, disarmed him. The others fled. Eliza stood over Clay, rifle still aimed. "This land ain't yours," she said. "And neither am I." Then she turned, walked away, the wind lifting her braid like a banner. Behind her, the prairie opened wide and wild. And for the first time, she didn't feel like she was escaping. She felt like she was arriving. Blood. Hot, sticky, and real. T'Sunk's blood soaked through Eliza's fingers as she pressed a rag to the wound in his side. The ambush had come swift as lightning. One of the outlaws doubling back through the trees, rifle trembling in his hands, firing blind into the woods. The bullet had torn into T'Sunk as he shoved her down and out of its path. "Stay with me," she hissed, her breath ragged as she dragged him behind a fallen log. "Don't you dare go die on me now." His teeth clenched tight, sweat beading on his brow. Bullet missed lung, but deep. "Helpful," she muttered. tearing open the pouch Nysa had pressed into her hand that morning. Herb's cloth, a flint blade. You're lucky she likes you. I'm not lucky. His voice was hoarse, just stubborn. Good. You're going to need all the stubborn you've got. She worked fast, hands trembling, heart pounding. She'd seen James patch men up after battle, and while Tsunk didn't scream, his body shook with the pain. She poured whiskey, firewater, he called it, over the wound. He didn't even flinch. Only his eyes flickered to hers. You've done this before? He rasped. She snorted. Nope, but I'm a fast learner. The blade hissed in the fire as she heated it. You sure? She asked, voice quieter now. He nodded once. No fear, no hesitation. She pressed the hot metal to the wound. His back arched, a low grunt escaping his throat. But he didn't cry out. When it was done, she wrapped him tight, her breath shaking in her chest. We can't stay here, she said. They'll come back. He nodded again, barely conscious. She pulled his arm over her shoulders and heaved him up, staggering under his weight. They moved slowly, one step at a time, through brush and bramble. Her legs ached, her arms burned, but she kept going, one foot in front of the other. By the time they reached the camp again, the sun was rising over the ridge. Nysa ran to meet them, face pale as smoke. What happened? Ambush! Eliza gasped. He saved me. The camp sprang into motion. Warriors lifted Tsunk with reverence, carrying him into his lodge. Nysa took over tending the wound, whispering prayers as she worked. Eliza stood outside, filthy, shaking, watching the blood soak into the earth. She felt empty and furious. Clay was still out there, alive, and he'd brought death to a place that had given her a second chance. That night, she didn't sleep. She stood watch by Tsunk's lodge, rifle across her lap, eyes sharp on the trees. When dawn came, she stepped into the circle of warriors gathered by the fire. The eldest among them, a man called Red Elk, looked up as she approached. They'll come again, she said. You know they will. Red Elk nodded. We saw their tracks near the river. They want me. That makes me your bait. Murmurs rippled through the group. Red Elk narrowed his eyes. You are not Cheyenne. No, she agreed. But I'm not theirs either. And I'll be damned if I let them burn this camp to the ground because of me. Another warrior spoke up. Swift Crow, a younger man with a fierce spirit. She fights like one of us. She stays. She's not asking to stay, Red Elk said, watching her. She's asking to fight. Eliza raised her chin. Damn right I am. They spent the day preparing. Warriors lined the ridge, hidden in the trees. Women and children were moved east, deeper into the forest. Eliza paced a clearing near the edge of camp, rifle slung over her shoulder, knife strapped to her boot, heart pounding like a war drum. Tsunk woke briefly, long enough to grip her hand and whisper, Ride hard. Do not hesitate. I won't, she whispered. You show me how. When the outlaws came, they came loud. 6 riders, guns gleaming. Clay at the center, face twisted with fury. Eliza, he shouted, voice booming through the trees. You think you can hide behind savages and live? You think you can steal my land and get away with it? She stepped out onto the clearing's edge. It was never your land, she called back, and I was never yours to sell. Should have died in that wagon, he spat. Should have never crawled out of your mama's mud hole, she fired back. The warriors grinned in the trees. Red Elk gave the signal. The outlaws barely saw it coming. Arrows flew from the ridge. Sharp, silent, deadly. 3 fell before they could lift their rifles. Chaos erupted. Gunfire cracked through the air. Horses screamed. Men shouted. Eliza sprinted across the field, diving behind a stump, her rifle already aimed. She fired once. Missed. Fired again. Dropped a man trying to run. Clay charged forward, blood on his face, teeth bared. You ruined everything, he screamed. You think they'll let you live after this? You think you belong with them? I belong wherever I choose, she snarled. They crashed together in a tangle of limbs and fury. He was stronger, but she was faster, meaner, with rage, forge, and betrayal. He swung wild. She ducked, drove her knee into his gut, then slammed the butt of her rifle into his jaw. He fell, coughing, bleeding. She stepped over him, breathing hard. "You could have just let me be," she said. "But you couldn't stand that I didn't need you." He reached for his pistol. She fired. The shot echoed like thunder. When the smoke cleared, he was still. The field went quiet. The last outlaw dropped his weapon and fled, disappearing into the trees. Red Elk emerged from the brush, nodding solemnly. "It is done." Eliza stood, shoulders heaving. The fight was over, but her war had only just ended. Back at the camp, the people gathered slowly. They did not cheer. They honored the fallen. They buried the dead. They sang songs low and mournful. Tasunk lay in his lodge, pale but awake. She sat beside him, her hands still shaking. "You rode like thunder," he said softly. She looked down. "You taught me." "No," he said. "You had it in you already. I only reminded you how to let it out." She didn't know what to say, so she took his hand and held it. In the days that followed, she helped rebuild, helped cook, helped heal. Slowly, the looks changed from suspicion to respect. The children followed her now, asking questions. The women taught her how to grind corn, how to stitch leather, how to sing softly under her breath. She laughed more. One morning, Red Oak came to her as she sat near the fire, polishing her rifle. "You stayed," he said. "I wasn't sure I would." "Now!" She looked toward the hills. "I don't know. I lost everything once. Then I lost it again. But here, I don't feel lost." He nodded. "Tasunk says you are brave." "He's biased." "He says you are stubborn, too." She grinned. "That's true." He placed a hand on her shoulder. "If you wish to stay, you are welcome." The words settled in her chest like roots. Later, as the sun set over the ridge, Tasunk stood beside her, arms still in a sling, his eyes scanning the horizon. "What now?" she asked. "We live," he said. "And after that?" He looked at her. "We see." The fire crackled behind them. The wind sang through the trees. Eliza looked at the horizon, then at the people gathered behind her. Children laughing, women sewing, men sharpening arrows. A tribe, once wary, now stronger. She wasn't the same woman who had knelt beside a grave or clung to the back of a wagon. She wasn't running anymore. She was standing, a warrior, a widow no longer, just a woman who chose to live. And if anyone came for her again, they'd find out just how dangerous a woman like that could be.